Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to give you guys an update on the South America tank. The South America tank is now 200 days old. It's a 200 liters or 50-gallon biotope tank. Biotope tank in quotation marks because there's animals from South America but also from Central North America, from Europe, and plants from all over the world. So it's not strictly speaking a biotope tank, but I still aim for this South America styled aquarium here. And today I want to give you guys an update on all the fish, or all the animals, all the fish and invertebrates that we have in this tank. In total, I added 10 species of fish and snails to this tank, and 9 of them are still alive. And today I want to give you guys an update while feeding them frozen food. They get red bloodworms, which is one of their favorite snacks today. And throughout the video, I want to explain how the species did, which species did well, where they naturally from, and also which species didn't end up too well, because one species ended up passing away within only these few months, which of course is not an amazing thing, but it's part of the hobby, I would say. And I want to go from the newest species to the oldest species. So the most recent addition to the tank, and I'm glad that the fish is now currently in the visible space, is the Red Bristlenose Pleco. You can see that little guy here. Just put down one of the snails. The snails is also a big problem or issue in this tank, but we will cover those later. The Red Bristlenose Pleco, I added it together with the Swordtails, like I would say 2 months, 3 months ago. It's the most recent addition to this tank, and Red Bristlenose Plecos are absolutely beautiful. They are a super red variety of the Bristlenose Pleco. Bristlenose Plecos are originally from South America. They are originally occurring in Brazil, in Peru, and in the Amazon River. And naturally, they have more like a dark blue or grayish color, because in nature this red color would be a huge disadvantage to them. They have these bristles. Right now you cannot really see them because these are young bristlenose plecos that I have. I have 2 of them. The other one, I think you cannot really see it at the moment. It's hiding somewhere in the back of the tank. The younger ones, they usually don't have these bristles. They grow when they reach sexual maturity. They are very large, these bristles. Maybe I can add a photo of one older one in the video here. And they signal to the female bristlenose plecos that a male is strong and that it's ready to mate, basically. So it's a secondary sexual characteristic, I would say. They need wood, so they need driftwood or some kind of wood, which I have plenty of in this tank. I have this huge chunk of wood throughout the whole tank. It is anchored with some stones and with some expanding foam. When I set it up, it was a big issue to get this wood in place, but now it's really great. I think it creates a cool look in this aquarium in general. And if you want to see how I built this whole thing, you can check out the video on the top right if you want, for the building process. They actually need the wood. They don't really eat the wood per se, but they need it for their digestion. So the wood has tons of fiber in it. And what bristlenose plecos eat is algae and biofilm. And the algae and biofilm grows on the wood. It also grows on this formation here in the middle, but it mainly grows on the wood. And while they eat the biofilm of the wood, they also eat those fibers that are present in the wood, and that helps them with their digestion. So if you don't have wood in it, they can't really digest their food that well, and that's bad for the bristlenose plecos, or for the bristlenose super red plecos we have here. So I think that's enough about the bristlenose pleco. The next species that I wanted to talk about is, or maybe one more fact about the bristlenose pleco, because pleco often sounds like an alarm signal, because we have plecos all over the world these days. They have become invasive in many countries that have warm water, but these are not the plecos that we know from Florida or from Texas that are invasive and that are basically unkillable. These stay way smaller. They only reach 4 to 5 inches, so 10 to 12 centimeters when they are mature, while normal plecos get like this size, and they are basically they are basically immortal, more or less, because you can put them out of water for days and they don't die. So they have nothing to do with that little bristlenose pleco that we have here in the tank. Now, the next species that we added, or that I added back then when I added the bristlenose plecos, is the swordtail. Now, as if I called for it, it's right here in the center. The swordtail, or in Latin it's called Scyphophorus helleri, is a fish that is originally from North or Central America. So again, it's not strictly only South American species, but it's absolutely beautiful. And here's another one. The ones with the swords are males, and there's also 2 females in there. There's only 1 female alive at this point, but I added 4 of them like 3 months ago while I added the bristlenose plecos, and I think their colors are absolutely amazing. Look at this beautiful little guy here. Maybe this is also a good point to start adding some food so you guys can see how they react when we feed them, because this is quite cool. So I have this little syringe here, and we can just, maybe it's easier to film the tank, and then we can just add some of it, and they usually like that quite a lot. Only the males carry this sword tail, and you can see that one feeding right here. It's pretty cool to see them feed. They are super active fish and a little more on the aggressive side compared to the normal platy fish, which we will come to in a minute. So you can see they are, I mean, you can only see that one because the other one probably has not noticed that there's food in the tank. They are a little more aggressive than platy fish and a little more like hierarchical, I would say. So there's a strict pecking order in swordtail fish, and there's a strict social hierarchy in them. So that's something that you should note when you get them, that they have enough space, that they have enough hiding spots. Like you cannot even see 2 of them at the moment, although they are quite large fish. They need that space, they need those hiding places and this huge vegetation. Otherwise, they could stress each other too much and die because of that. They are actually notorious jumpers. So I read on Reddit and on the internet that they frequently jump out of tanks. That's why people usually recommend getting a lid for a tank where you have swordtail fish. But I have not experienced that at all. The only time one of them jumped was when I added them to the tank. Since then, there was not a single one that jumped out of the tank. One of them unfortunately passed away and got devoured by all the snails and the other fish in the tank. But other than that, they have been doing very fine. So far, they have not reproduced. Usually, they reproduce pretty quickly because they are life bearers, just like our platy fish, our southern platy fish to be more precise. But so far, I think they have not reproduced. There could be 1 or 2 fry here that, like this one, this very orange fry here. This could be a swordtail fry, but I'm not 100% sure. We will only know in a few months when they grow larger. They are in the wild. They are colored very differently. So in the wild, they have this olive or green, dark green color, and not like here in the tank, this bright red color or this bright orange color. Actually, we have all of them here, all of the ones that are in the tank at the moment. Beautiful, beautiful orange colored fish. This is a breed that was crossbred. So we had at the beginning, we had these olive green swordtails a few years ago, and we had platy fish, and then they some breeders crossbred them, and then this beautiful typical orange color of the swordtail was the result basically. And now this is very frequently known in the aquarium trade. And now, speaking of life bearers, another life bearer that is very closely related to the swordtail. It's actually, biologically speaking, it's not clear whether it's 2 different species because they can in fact interbreed. It's the platy fish, which we have here now together with the swordtails. Now they know that there are some mosquito larvae or no, some bloodworms left, so they are all checking out the space here. I think it's a good time to give them another chunk of frozen food now. So let's put it in, and then I can continue explaining a little more things about our Platy fish. So I would say the Platy fish, when it comes to fish in this aquarium, has done extremely well. You can see this female that I added right at the beginning, the yellow one, the yellow big chunky one. She's still alive, and then we added tons of these typical Xiphophorus maculatus Platy fish with that characteristic dot here at the tail. And then we have all of these youngsters over there, the newer generations. Lots of them, I think we added at the beginning, we added 6 or 7 or so. Lots of them, lots of their parents already passed away, but their offspring are doing super fine. They keep reproducing, and we have multiple generations at this point because they are life bearers and they can reproduce very quickly if the tank has perfect parameters for them. It's actually quite interesting. The female platies, just like guppy fish, they have the ability to store sperm for several months. So they can be impregnated by a male platy once, or by a male swordtail actually once, and can then give birth to offspring for multiple times, which is quite interesting, and which is of course a survival strategy for nature. Platy fish are one of the most hybridized fish in the hobby as well. So there's tons of different varieties of platies, and some of them just look cool and interesting, like the wagtail platy fish, the hyphen, the what's it called, the Mickey Mouse platy fish. But there's also some breeding forms that are not really animal friendly in my opinion, especially like the balloon platy, for instance, where you have a fish that is bred in a way that is definitely not fish friendly, I would say. Just like with fancy goldfish, for instance, or in dogs and in cats, we also have that sometimes. I prefer the more natural form, the Xiphophorus maculatus, that we would also find more or less like this in nature in North and Central America. And for me, they are, first of all, usually more healthy, stronger, and they are, for me personally, also more beautiful because it's more natural. They are common algae eaters. You can see now that all the bloodworms are gone. They start pecking on the algae everywhere. And they also eat biofilm, but still in this tank I have tons of algae because there's a decent light source in this tank, and there's tons of fish food, which promotes algae growth and snail growth, of course. Then we also have another fish that I added when I set up this tank, or like a few weeks after setting up the tank, which is Adolfo's catfish, or Adolfo's Cory. And as you can see, none of them are left in the tank anymore. I thought the parameters were fine, but for some reason all of them passed away one by one. And this happened quite quickly, over like 4 months, I would say. To be honest, they didn't look super healthy and super strong from the start, so maybe it was a problem with that particular batch of Corydoras, or also the water wasn't perfect. So my water parameters, my pH in this tank was 7.4, and I read on the internet that an ideal pH is between 5.5 and 7, or 5.5 and 6.5, so slightly acidic, or below 7 rather. And my tank is like 7 to 7.4. I measured it multiple times, and the value changes always slightly, but it's on the more neutral side, I would say, this water. And maybe that was also the reason that they didn't like the water parameters. So unfortunately, they passed away. I really love Corydoras, and they would have added also like another South American fish to the tank, but unfortunately, it passed away. And these are also the only species that passed away. Then we have an Apistogramma. I added 2 back then. This is the Apistogramma female. Now she's hiding in a spot where I can rarely clean the window or the glass, because it's quite difficult to get here with my glass cleaning razor blades. But she likes to hide there, and this is also very typical of this fish species. She always tends to hide here in this little cave, or also over here in that cave. And at the beginning, I had 2 Apistogramma agassizi, or dwarf cichlids, as they are called. They are belonging to to the double red XL variety. So this is also not a natural variety. It's also a artificially bred one. You cannot really see it in the female. The female looks rather natural, I would say. But the male back then, and I will insert a video now where you can see the male when I added it, it looked very beautiful, super beautiful colored, wonderful looking tail, I would say, and fish in general. But it's also not 100% like it occurs in nature. The male passed away for no particular reason, at least none that I know. It looked extremely healthy. It was always guarding this central formation here, and the female was always swimming through the caves and probably hiding some or guarding some eggs. And this is also what they do in nature frequently. They are currently the second largest fish in the tank. You can see it very nicely now next to the largest fish, the swordtail that we have. And it's a very peaceful cichlid, I would say. So unlike other cichlids, the Apistogramma cichlid, it doesn't eat plants or it doesn't destroy plants for territorial reasons. It doesn't eat smaller fish. I mean, I'm sure it eats fry as every other fish would probably do, but it doesn't really hurt the other fish. So it's a very peaceful addition to any kind of South America style community tank. And I really enjoy having the female. Not sure if I will get another male because first of all they are very expensive and I'm not sure why it passed away. But let me know in the comments below what you think. Should we get another male or maybe a male and another female for that lone survivor, or should we just leave her in there and chill with the other fish? Let me know in the comments below. Then we have another fish species that is really, really nice and that is always everywhere in the tank basically, and it's just the Glowlight Tetra. You can see them here munching on some bloodworms still, and it's quite interesting. These fish are from South America, so there the theme fits again. They, for some reason, they are mostly chilling on this side of the tank. I have no clue why, and they actually occur like this in nature. So you would think that this is also like a fish that was kept or that was bred by breeders in this way, but it's actually not. It's actually not. It's a trait that they also have when they occur in nature. They are originally from Guyana. They live in rivers, and in those rivers, you usually have very dark water, and that water prevents them from seeing each other. That's why they developed over the generations. They developed this glowing stripe, and that helps them to see each other because they are schooling fish. They need to stay in that school to protect each other from predators and from larger fish. And that glowing stripe helps them to basically communicate with each other, which is quite cool. And it looks absolutely lovely in the tank. And I really like their hunting behavior, so to say. When I just add another bunch of mosquito larvae here, hopefully you can see it, because I think they have a cool behavior where they go straight to the mosquito larvae or the bloodworms that I add, and are usually the first fish to arrive when I add those frozen foods, which I think is pretty cool. And once you add those frozen foods, they are usually also closer to each other. So during the day, they are often scattered throughout the tank, but the schooling behavior becomes more apparent when I add frozen food, or when they are afraid sometimes also. Glowlight Tetras are very, very peaceful fish. So just like the Apistogramma, they are perfect for community tanks, I would say. And they are, if you compare it to like a neon tetra or a tiger barb, for instance, which are also common schooling fish in similar size, I would say, they usually don't nip the fins of other fish. Fin nipping is not that big of a problem in this tank because I don't have fish with big fins. But if I had like a betta fish in there or normal guppy fish which have large fins, then nip finning would become a problem. And my brother-in-law Tobias, for instance, he has neon tetras, and the guppy fish, they are often suffering from those neon tetras because they often nip their fins. And this is not the case at all with those glowlight tetras, which I think is pretty amazing. They are non-life bearing, so they are egg spawners. Pretty classical. Most of the fish in the world are egg spawning, and they live quite long, so they can live up to 5 years. And so far, I think we added 15 of them. I think most of them are still in there. Like I've seen 1 or 2 dead ones, but that's normal. But the fact that they are still in there is quite amazing because, or that most of them are still in there is quite amazing because they don't really reproduce in this tank. So I've never seen a fry of Glowlight Tetras, but that means that the water parameters are fine for them, that the tank is fine for them, and that they feel good and healthy in this tank. I also like how these orange colored fish are all gathering on this spot here because this is where we added the bloodworms. It's a shame that this tank is a little scratched around the corners here because it was an old tank that I just reused. But it is what it is. It's a low budget project, and I think the result is still beautiful. And now I want to address the elephant in the room. I'm sure you've already seen it. Not really the elephant in the room, but rather the ram's horn snail in the room. Which are all of these red blobs that you can see everywhere. You can see them here, you can see them on the top of the water. And those snails, I think they are cool. I like them, but they have grown in a completely crazy way. Like there's so many ram's horn snails at this point. It's almost unbelievable. And it all started with this one snail on the top of the tank here. Its name is Gordon Ramsay, the ram's horn snail, and it doesn't stop growing. Like it's like this size at this point, and I've never seen a ram's horn snail this size. And it does a very interesting thing that ram's horn snails and bladder snails both do. It can use the surface tension of the water to use it as like a surface to hold on to, and then it just eats whatever it finds. And ram's horn snails are super interesting animals, actually. One of the most interesting animals biologically speaking. They have these red and curved shells. The variety we have in this tank is originally from the USA. I think originally from Florida, the state of invasive species, but ram's horn snails are originally from Florida. And it's called ram's horn snail because its shell looks like a ram's horn, basically. That's pretty self-explanatory, I would say. And there's some interesting facts. The red color of the snail is actually due to hemoglobin in their blood, which is one of the rare cases where a invertebrate has hemoglobin in its blood for carrying oxygen, which is quite interesting. And it's a bioindicator. So the more ram's horn snails you have, the more food you usually put in your tank. And this is quite obvious in this tank, but I still want to tell you why there's so many of them. I feed this tank too much, or I fed these fish too much in the past few weeks and months because I wanted to promote platy fry growth, that they get faster, bigger, basically. But of course, there's tons of leftover food in the tank, and that's why we have also these snails that eat all of the leftover food. They don't attack plants, so this is a common misconception. Ram's horn snails usually don't care about the plants. They eat biofilm of the plants and leftover fish food, and also like sometimes I feed them carrots, like you can see here. They are all gathered around this carrot, and they basically eat everything. They are completely omnivorous, and this is quite an interesting animal. I love having them in there, but I also thought for population control to maybe add a small group of pea puffers because they love eating snails. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I know pea puffers are not originally from South America, but I still think it would be a cool addition. I just don't know how they would interact with the Apistogramma, the Dwarf Cichlid, and the Swordtails. That's my biggest kind of worry at this point. We also have bladder snails in the tank. You can see them here and here and here, for instance. So there's some bladder snails, but definitely the most prominent, or the most dominant rather, snail species is the ram's horn snail. So bladder snails are closely related to ram's horn snails. They are originally from Europe and US, or North America rather. They are now spread throughout the world. They are super adaptable to any kind of even low oxygen environment, and also wastewaters, and they live in all sorts of weird environments around the world. They can breathe air in case where there's not a lot of oxygen in the water, they have an organ that allows them to float, first of all, and also to breathe air. You can actually see Gordon Ramsay, the ramshorn snail, which does the same as these bladder snails, floating here on the surface. And you can see, compared to my finger, how large it is. Like, this is very rare to see a ramshorn snail of that size, I would say. And how it chills here, super cool. Bladder snails, just like ramshorn snails, are hermaphrodites. That means one snail has both male and female gender, which is quite interesting because they can just reproduce if you have two of them. It doesn't really matter which two of them you grab. You always have both male and female sex organs in one animal. They can hitchhike on plants. They have translucent egg clutches that they stick to plants and to other kind of surfaces, and then they can hitchhike their way into your tank. So if you don't want them, you might still end up having bladder snails in your tank because they are frequently infesting the tanks and the aquariums of fish stores. I think we have one more animal in here. Yes. Which is the red-rimmed Melania snail. The red-rimmed Melania snail, you cannot really see it at the moment in this tank because it's a nocturnal species. But what I did this morning is I cleaned the tank this morning, and I can get this bucket here quickly and show you guys. This is the amount of snails that I ended up with just cleaning the water and siphoning a little bit of the tank, and you can see how freaking many snails we have. So here you have the Malaysian trumpet snail, or also called red-rimmed Melania snail. They have these typical long shells, and I will add them back into the tank later on. So no worries, these snails will not be killed or anything. But I just wanted to show you guys how many snails are actually in this tank. And I just cleaned some of the sand here because it was filled with algae and some old fish food. So just to show you guys how many snails there were in there. One thing that these red-rimmed Melania snails have in common with our Platy fish and with our swordtails is that they are also live bearers, which I found quite interesting. So they give birth to very small red-rimmed Melania snails that just look like the adult ones, and they don't lay eggs like the ramshorns or the bladder snails. And they burrow constantly, which is actually a big advantage for your tank. So they burrow, they dig through the whole sand and through the whole substrate. That's why it's also better to have like a substrate for them, because it's more natural to them. And by doing that, they actually oxygenate your soil. So this is good for your soil's health and for your plants, because they also redistribute nutrients between different layers of the soil. And I don't know if you can actually see them. I don't think that one of them is close to the glass, but sometimes you can even see them burying or digging through the front layers of the soil. They are parthenogenic. So usually the whole population of red-rimmed Melania snails is female. So another interesting reproduction strategy. Usually they can give birth to offspring without being impregnated by a male counterpart. There are males as well, but usually there's only females in one tank. That also means that if you get one red-rimmed Melania snail in your tank, it can repopulate the whole tank with red-rimmed Melania snails. Again, I really don't mind having them in there because they are burying. You cannot really see them throughout the whole day. They have a very beneficial role for the tank and for the soil specifically. So I really like having them in the tank. And at this point, I think it's a good time to say thank you to the Tetra and to the Guppy gang. I will add you guys quickly here in the video. Thank you so much. Your monthly small donation means a ton for me and for this channel. I try to produce one video every week. It costs me a lot of time, a lot of money, and it really helps that you guys give a small monthly donation in the Tetra gang for $1 a month, or in the Guppy gang for a little more a month. So if you would consider doing that, I would highly appreciate it, and you can find the link below to become a channel member. If you would like to see how I set up this tank, you can check out this video, where I show an in-depth aquascape tutorial of how I built this whole tank. You can see how it looked like 200 days ago. Or this video where I show how my Jewel Rio 240 tank did after 2 years. Thanks for watching.